Next, we have a public meeting. So I need a mover and second of the public meeting concerning the zoning bylaw amendment application D14Z1022 of Leverton Development relating to property located at Lot G, Concession South, Main Street, Register Plan number 18, known as 51403 Ron McNeil line, being called to order at 7:39. Winner, Jaguar, all in favor? Carried. Purpose of this public meeting is to consider an application of Lot G, Plan 18, Township of Malahide shall remain the Village Residential 1 VR1 zone with a site-specific provision Village Residential 1 VR zone. Applicant is Matt Campbell, care of Zelenka Primo Limited on behalf of Leverton Development, Inc. Lot G, Plan 18, Township of Malahide, known as 51403 Ron McNeil line. Allison, can you confirm the method and date of notice, please?
Yes, through your worship, notice of this follow-up public meeting was given in the prescribed manner by publication in the Umber Express on September 28th and October 5th. In addition, affected property owners were within 120 meters were sent a notice by mail at minimum 20 days prior to the meeting.
Thank you. And Eric, you're there?
Yes, your worship.
Okay, can you give us an overview, please?
Certainly. So before council tonight is returning zoning bylaw amendment application for a lot here in Springfield. The owner is proposing to construct a 2.5-story, 6-unit apartment building. As previously noted, the application proposes site-specific provisions for reduced front yard setback of 1 meter where 6 meters is required under the bylaw, and also permit a parking space coverage of 17.6% where the bylaw requires a maximum of 15%. To provide a bit of chronology on the application so far, a public meeting had been held on July 7th to hear comments from the public on the proposed development, and the decision was deferred to a subsequent council meeting. Prior to that subsequent council meeting, the application had been revised in order to lower the height of the building from a previously proposed 13 meters to the now 10.5 meters in order to comply with the maximum height requirements of a zoning bylaw. This was in response to concerns raised at the meeting regarding the height of the proposed building. The application returned to a subsequent council meeting on December 1st, where it was deferred until another public meeting to be held here tonight to hear feedback from the public on the proposed revisions. Public comments were received after the submission of the staff report, but prior to the formation of the agenda, raising concerns regarding matters such as lack of privacy, water capacity of the existing well, access to parking, as well as concerns regarding the reduced front yard setback that potentially restrict sight lines on Ron McNeil line. In regards to some of those matters, I would simply note regarding lack of privacy that the application has been revised to lower the height of the building to comply with the zoning bylaw standards. With regards to water capacity of the existing well, servicing information will be required at the site plan control stage to ensure that the well will have adequate capacity to support the proposed development. Regarding a reduced front yard setback, it is noted that several buildings along Ron McNeil line do have reduced front yard setbacks, and information provided with the application shows that the proposed front yard setback would be in keeping with other buildings along Ron McNeil line and consistent with the area. And then in addition to the reduced front yard setback, the applicant is also proposing a minor increase in parking space coverage, as noted again, the 17.6% where the bylaw requires a maximum of 15%. The proposed apartment dwelling is for permitted use under the Elgin County Official Plan and the Malahide Official Plan, as well under the Village Residential 1 zone of the Malahide zoning bylaw. And that time concludes our presentation. I'm happy to take questions from members of council.
Okay, thank you, Eric. Adam, have you got anything to add?
Thanks, Your Worship. So just to add to Eric's report, the township zoning bylaw does permit an apartment provided the other criteria are met. That criteria is as Eric mentioned, the front yard setback and the reduced parking requirements. But as council is aware, the public may not be, is that the township has a site plan control bylaw separate from zoning that requires certain types of developments be subject to a pre-approved site plan and development agreement before a building permit can be issued. This process is referred to as site plan control or site plan approval, and this proposal would be subject to site plan approval. The township site plan control bylaw delegates approvals to the CAO, but it also acknowledges that such decisions can also be issued by council. This proposal is one that can be determined by township council, especially given the public interest given to this proposal. Similarly, there is the lane to the east that has been referenced in the planner's reports on this matter. And given that the lane is an unopened township-owned lane, council will also be required to determine how this lane can be utilized for this site. The lane has historically been used by the two adjoining properties for vehicular access. The way that the proponent currently has his plans drawn will require that legal access through the township-owned lane be granted for vehicles to access the parking area at the rear of the apartment building. And for this to occur, a registered easement agreement would be required. This easement would include requirements such as ongoing maintenance, snow removal, insurance, etc. And the township can also use the site plan approval process to require the developer to improve the lane to a certain standard. So the amendment in front of council this evening is an important step in the ultimate development of this site, but may not be the last, especially given how this site is or isn't developed. This will be determined by whether the ultimate building houses more than 2 residential units and whether the site is solely dependent on the township-owned lane. Council should also be cognizant that if the application isn't approved, that the site can be developed in an alternative manner that does not require a zoning bylaw amendment. That's all I have to add.
Thanks, Adam. Is the applicant there anywhere that would wish to make comment? Go ahead, sir.
Good evening, Your Worship. It's Matt Campbell from Zolinka Priamo. Excuse me. Thanks for council scheduling an additional public meeting. We certainly feel that the public discourse is a good and positive thing, and we're happy that the public was able to provide comments on the revised application. As Mr. Steele mentioned, we have revised the application to respond to some of those concerns. I understand there are still concerns from residents. I'd be happy to respond to some of those concerns. I note that there's a letter from the Zimmers that are on the council's agenda this evening that notes some concerns. I'd be happy to respond to those and provide a fulsome response to how we can address those concerns. What's before council this evening is really a decision on where this building will go on the property. It's not a decision as to what building can go on the property. It's the decision on where this building is going, and that's in relation to the proposed reduced front yard setback. And as Mr. Steele mentioned, that there's an existing established street line along Ron McNeil that is plus or minus 1 meter, which is where we're proposing to locate this building, just to keep it in line with the existing street line. The minor change to the parking area coverage is really as a result of some of the additional infrastructure we're looking to implement. We are proposing additional parking well beyond what is required in the zoning bylaw. I recognize that there were some concerns about visitor parking. Visitor parking would be accommodated on this site, and by providing a little bit of extra parking coverage, well, we can accommodate that visitor parking. In regards to access, this is an interesting one. Now, we have had discussions with township staff, and the developer here, Leverton Developments, is more than happy to provide physical improvements to that laneway, whether it's asphalt surfacing or whatever surface that the township is looking for. As well as enter into an agreement to provide maintenance for that laneway. And I think Mr. Bettridge can inform council on the specific way that may be accommodated. That would be an easement and a legal binding agreement that's registered on title between the landowner and the municipality. Again, happy to take care of that. I understand that there were some concerns from the public, and there would not be any additional cost to anyone who is not the landowner of this property meaning that individuals who currently use that laneway, they would certainly, it wouldn't change their rights. And if anything, it may result in an improvement because they would get a potentially a better surface to use. There was a question about garbage. Right now, we're looking at internal garbage storage through a garbage room, which would be brought to the curb at collection day. And regarding water capacity, again, as Mr. Steele mentioned, that would be something that would be determined through the site plan approval process. And as Mr. Bettridge mentioned, that's a very robust process, and the township would be well within its rights to ensure that all concerns are satisfied in a technical sense through that process. If you have any other questions, happy to respond to them. And if members of the public have any questions that I might be able to answer, please feel free to let me know and I'd be happy to answer those. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Matt. And we mentioned the Zimmer letter to council and some concerns. Why don't we address that from your perspective now that we have you?
Wonderful. Thanks, Your Worship. So I'm looking at that letter now. There's the first point. I'm going just through the bullet points. That is on pages 26 and 27 of the council agenda. Regarding privacy, I think as Mr. Steele mentioned, this building is within the height provisions that are set out in the bylaw. So we're not going beyond what the bylaw already permits. So certainly building within the interior side yard setbacks, rear yard setbacks, and height of what the bylaw currently requires. In terms of physical buffering, again, I think I mentioned this last time we discussed this project. In all the projects that we work on, I'm a huge proponent of board-on-board fencing and landscaping inside of that fencing. So through the site plan control process, what I would certainly advocate for is robust fencing around the westerly lot line and rear lot line. And if there's an opportunity to provide additional fencing along that laneway, well, we can certainly look at that too. Inside of that fencing, I always try to ensure that we include evergreen plantings, and there's certainly species that can get quite tall within several years that would provide visual screening well beyond the top of a 6-foot fence. Regarding water, again, that's something that I don't have a fulsome answer for right now, but that will be taken care of through engineering through the site plan approval process. That's more of a yes or no answer. There are certainly strict criteria that the township and the health unit would require for a new well. I can't comment as to whether that criteria will be fulfilled, but again, that's an engineering concern. If there is concerns about that, well, unfortunately, that development wouldn't be able to go through if adequate water service wouldn't be able to be provided. And adequate water service is not just water service for this building, but we also need to confirm that there isn't going to be any adverse impact to anyone else's water supply. It's kind of an unusual issue in a semi-urban development, but that's something we're certainly cognizant of, and we certainly don't want to have any impacts on anyone's wells. Access to the parking area, we mentioned that we are looking to use that laneway. Now, the purpose of a laneway is for vehicular and pedestrian access, and we're looking to use that for access to this development. Alternatively, it would be unfortunate that if we were required to put a driveway on this property, right next to an existing laneway. That's just an inefficient use of land. And again, my client is certainly happy to improve that laneway and happy to enter into a joint use and maintenance agreement, and certainly an easement for formal access of that laneway. And we can get into any sort of specifics that council might want to discuss about the use of that laneway. There's the comment regarding reduced front yard setback. Again, that is simply to bring the building in line with the established street setback. On the site plan that we've prepared, you can see the outlines of the adjacent buildings to the east and the west. And you can see that the proposed apartment building is generally in line with those buildings. If we were to comply with the standard front yard setback, that building would actually be set well back from the street. And again, One thing to keep in mind is that when we're talking about the front yard setback, we're not talking about the distance between the front of the building and the traveled portion of the street. It's the lot line. So we're already quite a ways back from the street. And again, if you can visualize the site, imagine you're looking down the street, it would be right in line with the existing houses on Ron McNeil. Visitor parking, as I mentioned, we are providing parking well in excess of what the zoning bylaw requires. And that was a decision that was made on the part of the developer. They wanted to ensure that there's sufficient parking both for residents and visitors. If someone has someone over to visit, they want to be ensure that there's going to be enough parking that we can accommodate that on site. So that was the decision to provide, again, 12 parking spaces, which is 2 spaces per unit, rather than the standard 1.25 per unit. Garbage, as I mentioned, we're looking to do that internal to the building for a small garbage room, and that's generally the standard for any new apartment building that we see. And then who would be responsible for plowing and removal of snow in the right-of-way? Well, that would be our client, subject to a maintenance agreement with the township. Those were just the bullet points that were in the Zimmer letter. If there were any other concerns, again, happy to address those this evening.
Okay, thank you, Matt. Anyone in the audience wish to make any comments or questions? And if they do, I would ask you to state your name and your address, just so we have that in the minutes. Anyone wish to make comments or questions? Bill, go ahead.
Didn't want to this point. My name is Bill McIntyre. I live at 11748 Springfield Road. Couple of comments. In what's been dealt with, there's no mention of the not having sufficient setback of the building from the municipal drain. There is a municipal drain on the south side of Ron McNeil line. If you take that and I would estimate from where they propose to build the building, the municipal drain is less than 5 meters. And I believe section 419-A of the township zoning bylaw requires a 7.5 meter setback. So I'm wondering why in this process, if in fact there is a municipal drain, why that wasn't shown as being another setback, not having the setback that are required.
Okay, thanks, Bill. Adam, have you got any comments on that?
Through you, your worship, yes. And for those watching online, those in the public who are providing comments don't have a microphone. So I'll summarize what Mr. McIntyre raised mention to, and that's the fact that there's no mention in the report or the application with regards to a setback from a municipal drain as per section 4.19A of the zoning bylaw. And I want to pull up that section right now. I believe that there's difference between
I have a copy of this. Like,
yeah, I've got it right in front of me. Thank you, Mr. McIntyre. So that would, so for is open municipal drains. Is this a buried municipal drain?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So the 7.5 is from the top of bank of a municipal drain. So that's when it's open and there's an open ditch or swale with regard to the drain. When we have drains that are closed buried underground, there's no setback requirements. There's I mean, you can't build over top, but I know there's a difference between open and buried municipal drains.
This calls it closer to 7.5 meters from the top of bank of a municipal drain. It doesn't say whether it's open or closed.
Okay, sorry, it goes on to say or less than 4.5 meters from top of
So this is for a smaller drain. And the township has been faced with this issue before, and they have had to make an adjustment to allow it. No question, there is a drain right there, and it's not. Now, the drain was put in the 1950s, so maybe the planners didn't bother to find the research of that. So that should be also a stipulation of the setback. The only other comment I've got is the the fact of the 1 meter setback. Well, you can drive from the school going east and, they've said it's in line with existing houses, but we're talking about a building that's 1 meter from the property line. It's gonna be about 25 feet high right there. These other ones that are in line, you're talking about a little wee porch on the front or something. So this building is gonna be closer to the road in appearance than anything else. And I mean, to be quite honest, anybody that's seen the property, you'd be to build a building of this size with, even though the parking lot says that the municipal standards for you folks that drive pickup trucks, sports utilities and cars, there's no way in the world that this little parking lot is adequate size for people to pull a truck in one side, pull a truck in the other side, and then be able to maneuver around. I think, I forget the distances, but the width of the parking space is not wide enough for me to get my truck in with the mirrors still sticking out. So how, if you get 2 truck tickets? And I believe I spoke to the CEO about it, and he felt that a bigger size parking lot would be probably more warranted to make it functional. And if I quoted you incorrectly, I'm sorry, but just go and measure your car, or your truck, how wide it is. It takes 9 feet to get it in a door, and the width of this parking spot is not 9 feet. So if it'd be almost like going to Wales for some of these malls. When I go to Wales, I park way out at the far end so somebody doesn't bang the side of my car or my truck or whatever. I mean, this has been a residential area for as long as 70 years that I can remember. Okay. Well, it's a residential neighborhood, and this building is not appropriate. We do need housing for people, there's no question. And the property, if they, the building they proposed is wonderful. It's too bad they couldn't find a lot of sufficient size so that they could supply their own laneway, supply their own parking, and then leave a little area for kids to play. The grass area they're proposing for the kids, there's no area for them to play in, and people in today's world don't have time to take the kids to the park every time the kids want to go down the swing. So I just feel we need this development. I think of 170 some odd people that signed the petition opposed to it. Nobody is opposed to having affordable housing, but we want it in an area where it's an asset to the municipality. This would not be an asset, and I'm sorry, I don't know the people's names to the east, but they bought that house. They put a nice addition on it and fixed it up wonderfully, thinking that they were living in a small local residential area. This apartment doesn't fit in that area. That's my opinion. Thank you very much.
Okay, thanks, Bill.
I should summarize for those online. Because I couldn't hear him. Is that okay?
Yes, certainly.
So for those online who may not have been able to hear Mr. McIntyre's comments, it's in relation to the drain, and I can speak a little bit further to that. It's also in relation to the front yard setback from the street, and there's some other porches along the street, but this building is not a small porch. He spoke to the general size requirements in the zoning bylaw for parking spaces and parking lots. They're not big enough for those who have larger vehicles, larger pickup trucks, vehicles of that nature. He spoke about this being a small residential character neighborhood. People who've bought in this neighborhood did not contemplate having an apartment of this nature going in onto this property, notwithstanding the community does need units in building residence types of this nature, but perhaps in a lot that's larger. Bill, is there anything that I missed in those comments there to summarize?
You've done a wonderful job. It's just too bad you
Thanks.
don't have a mic.
Well, what I'm gonna do is that if I can get maybe anyone in the audience who does wish to speak, what we can do is set the podium up and with one of the microphones. Is there any more members from the audience? Is there any more members from, just a raise of hands?
Pat,
Okay. Well, is there anyone else? Is there just one more person? Two more people? There's microphones.
All right, Adam, if I can add, I could hear Mr. McIntyre fairly well.
Oh. Okay. Thank you, Matt. We do have two more members from the audience who wish to, there could be more, but we do have them set up with microphones, so I appreciate that. Is it Pat? Perhaps before we move on, would the council like to hear any responses from either our planner, Matt, or myself with regards to Mr. McIntyre's comments, or should we go through?
why don't we go through
Okay.
all the questions and then we can have comments? Okay, go ahead, Pat. You need your name and address.
Sorry, Pat, just your name and address.
So my comment is similar to Bill. The same thing. We've had 176 people sign the petition. And the petition, all of them pretty much said the same thing, not that we object to these buildings being built in the village. We need growth, we want to put schools going on our training centers and store all of that going. But we just think that there's a better place where there should be more planning to put in buildings that's not in this area. There's what Phil's talked about, the laneway, is a huge concern, safety concern. The building is just too big for the size for where you want to put it. You just talked a little while ago about this fence, this wonderful fence that you're gonna put along the sides. So people now have wonderful sites. They can sit in lawn chairs and they can see the yard, and they can see cars coming, and they can be, and now they're gonna look at the fence. There's so many things about it that, the parking, the concern. You're talking about, fixing up the lane. What does that mean to the neighbor who's doing there every year? There's still just a whole lot of, just too many concerns in the answer to retail. And there's 176 other people who signed it, there's no hesitation. And there's still a little vote by the petition. So why don't you just put it out in the post office and people are signing what page or something. And it's not that they don't want you to build in the village, and build apartment buildings and affordable housing. You just don't want properties like this, it's just too small, they don't feel appropriate.
Okay, thanks, Pat. Did you have a comment as well?
Hello, everyone. My name is Cody Becker. I'm at 51421 Crescent. So pretty much the same as Pat and Mr. McIntyre. A few of us community members did go out to the lot, take a measuring tape to measure the 1 meter setback, and it is not similar to the property to the east or the west. There's further setback from those properties. They are further back from the property line. So we did look at that. And of course, just like Mr. McIntyre mentioned, it's a big brick building that's going to be there from side to side of the property line. And that changes the sight line. And when you have 12 vehicles that are coming in and out, plus the existing neighbors to the east, that's 2 additional vehicles, and their kids and everything, and close to a school, it just doesn't make sense. But allowing the property setback, the variance, just to allow for them to have a bigger building. It shouldn't be at the cost of the public safety, in our opinion. So that's pretty much the main point for us. And then the parking reports. It looks pretty on paper, like everything's going to fit properly, but that's not the case. And in the proposal, in the drawings with all the boundaries and everything, they aren't fully, properly depicting the actual building and the property lines there. And I know that from like Elgin County mapping or Geo Warehouse or whatever. I am a realtor, so I know that those boundaries are not always correct. It doesn't actually depict the actual property boundaries of those properties when you're using them. And even my own house is not properly lined up on the boundaries. So what's in the actual mapping online that I was looking in the documents today for the agenda, that's not the proper boundary for the setup on the mapping, in my opinion.
Okay, thank you. Anyone else wish to make comments? And then we'll, if not, we'll ask Matt and Adam to respond to some of the questions. Anyone else wish to make comments? All right, Matt, you've heard some of the concerns. How do you reply?
Thank you, Your Worship, and thank you to the members of the public that commented. I know it's not always a fun thing to do, but we certainly value your comments. Mr. McIntyre made comments that there's no way the parking lot is big enough. This parking lot was designed to municipal standards. So if there's an opinion that it's too small, I don't know quite if I can satisfy that comment other than to say that it's designed to municipal standards. You know, we've certainly been involved in developments where individuals with larger trucks have had difficulty getting into spaces that are sized to a municipal standard. I think that's a result of the fact that people are choosing to purchase large vehicles. In the case of this development, if someone has, you know, a dually or something like that, this is probably not the spot for them. If you have a large vehicle, maybe you will choose not to reside in one of these units if you're going to have difficulty getting in and out of the parking area. But it is designed to a municipal standard. This is the same standards we use more or less all across Ontario. Again, if it's a subjective comment, again, I'm not sure if anything that I'm going to say is going to satisfy that. There was the comments regarding the property is too small. Again, we're not looking for relief for coverage or building coverage or landscaped open space. We are providing a landscaped open space area. There was the commentary about providing a place for kids to play. There is open space on the property. We're showing a gazebo and a garden. Whether those features are actually implemented or there's a small play structure that's put in, there's certainly available landscaped open space. And certainly that's something that I'm cognizant of. I have a small family and I have 2 little boys that run around like crazy. That's certainly top of mind for me. And we always strive to have adequate amenity space in all the developments that we work on. The last comment here, and I apologize, I didn't catch the name. There was concerns about the accurate representation of the boundaries of this site. That was a little alarming simply because we had this site surveyed by an Ontario land surveyor. So this is not a matter of using Elgin County's GIS to come up with a site plan. No, this was surveyed by a surveyor. So if there are concerns with the representation of lot lines here, that's something that has some pretty heavy connotations. So what I can say is that if there's any discrepancy, that's a legal matter because this land was surveyed. You know, when we have a survey done on a property, we trust that it is absolutely correct, and there are legal consequences if it's not. So we certainly put in the time and effort to make sure that the topographic survey and these dimensions are absolutely accurate. There was a comment that this development shouldn't be at the cost of public safety. I agree with that. It shouldn't be. And if there's any safety, tangible and objective safety concerns, that's something that we haven't heard from an agency level, from the township, and nor were we asked to prepare any sort of traffic impact study. Having a parking lot of 12 vehicles shared with, you know, potentially 4 or 5 other vehicles that may be using that laneway, that certainly doesn't cause me any concern. we work on developments all the time with that kind of relationship, especially on an arterial road like Ron McNeil. If there's any additional information that speaker can provide in terms of specifically what hazards may be perceived here, I'd be interested to know that. But from a safety perspective, I'm not a traffic engineer, but this is certainly consistent with many developments that we've worked on in the past that have had no real or tangible safety issues. I believe that was the commentary that I heard. If I missed anything, please let me know and be happy to respond.
Okay, thanks, Matt. Adam, you got anything to add to that?
Thank you, Your Worship. It would just be in addition to the drain comment that Mr. McIntyre raised, that those requirements in the zoning bylaw are for open municipal drains that we would see in the agricultural area. There's buried drains in this on Ron McNeil line. Those setbacks don't apply to this type of drain.
Okay, and I'm going to advise council that the next process is that we are going to receive all the concerns and comments received, but I will give you an opportunity to make questions to either the planner or staff about this application. Any comments or questions from council? Rick or Martin?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just here to Adam, you mentioned there's no setbacks for drains. There has to be something, hasn't there? Couldn't build around on top of it.
There's no drain on this private property. It's along Ron McNeil line, but it's underground.
Okay, and the setback is not applicable?
No. If you read this section in the zoning bylaw, it's meant for open municipal drains along that go across farmers' fields and such like that. It's for the open drains, not the buried drains that are underground. It'd be the same, like if there's like there'd be sewer lines under the road. There's no setbacks from those lines either. They're under the road allowance, not on the private properties.
Thank you.
Any other questions before we move? Jess?
Mayor Manel, to Adam, how close to farm drain can we build?
Through your worship, can I ask how that question pertains to this application?
Because we're talking about a drain and the other is a drain as well, so that's how it pertains to it.
So I've got section 4.19 of the zoning bylaw on my laptop here, and those are for municipal drains and natural water courses. So these are open drains that would run across farmers' fields, or open natural water courses that would be under the Conservation Authority. This is making sure that buildings aren't too close to those sort of features. In Springfield, under Ron McNeil line and under the county's road allowance, there's infrastructure under the road allowance, one being a drain. It's not an open drain, it's a buried drain. So there's no development happening within the road. If there was development was impacting that infrastructure, the county would have commented about what's happening in the road allowance, or we would have commented about what impacts could occur to the underground drain. I hope that answers your question.
Yes, it does. Thank you.
Any other questions from council? Okay, the next part of the process, we will reconvene in the council meeting, and then we will discuss among our council members this application on the pros and cons and how we're going to deal forward. So we need to move and second the public meeting concerning zoning bylaw amendment application D14 Z0722 Leverton Developments relating to property located at Lot G, concession south of Main Street, register plan number 18, known as 51403 Ron McNeil line, be adjourned and council reconvene at 8:18. Who in seconder? Sarna, Widner, all in favor? Carried. So next we'll go into comments in regard to the application. Anyone wish to make comments? I will make a comment to start this off. I have a lot of concerns over this application. There's setbacks that it's not just a minor setback. They require 6 meters. They're asking for 1. Certainly, I think we would ask if a neighboring property burned down and wanted to rebuild, they would be adhered to bring back to the 6 meters. So that's one of the many things. Parking, it's over the addressed parking, road access, which is an unopened road access, which the township has control over. So among all these 3 things, I am concerned over this property, and I would suggest that we deny the application. But that's one vote, but we'll ask everyone to make their decisions. Rick?
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor. We can talk about all these bylaw amendments and this, that, and next thing. The point that sticks out in my mind is this building does not fit where they want to put it. And I go back to the Elmer structure that blocks the view of the Catholic Church and the stained glass windows. To me, that building should have never been allowed to be built because it doesn't fit. And this building doesn't fit either. And then they want to build a fence, then they're going to put trees that grow higher than the fence. And all. It's just going to be so out of place. It's not even funny. So ignoring all the exemptions that they want, I don't like the idea just because it takes away from the quaintness of a village that we've been fighting for and trying to grow. We fought for the schools. We've tried to do everything we can. It's a great little community. And then to start making it look different, because that's not attractive. That's not going to attract people to the village. They're going to look at that and go, Jesus, can't have that. So I don't like the idea, and I'm not in favor of it either, just because it doesn't fit.
Okay, thanks. Any other questions or comments? Mark?
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'm in agreement. I know the presenters here did a good job tonight. We are not against development. That isn't what this is about. This is about a building that is just too big for this property, in my opinion. If I was a neighbor, I sure wouldn't want it beside me because it would just kind of ruin everything you've got. I mean, you keep your places nice, all of a sudden you got this. Anyway, I will not support it, but I would support it on another lot that would be more fitting on in this town. I think it'd be great. Thank you.
Any other questions? Jess?
Mayor Manel, we always say that we listen to the people. Well, we have 174 people that signed the petition. And if we let this building go ahead, I don't consider that listening to the people. So for no other reason than that, I'm not opposed to this building going in a different spot because we certainly need building in Springfield for people to move in. But I don't think that's the right spot, and neither do the 174 other people. So my vote would be no at this time.
Any other, Dominique?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Yeah, and I agree that our role is to listen to people. And I just want to add another voice because just last week I got another call from an employer who is struggling, as we all know, to bring skilled labor into the area. And after, doing backflips and everything possible to find someone that was suited for the position, this gentleman coming from overseas has a family of 6, or another employee who's looking for has a a smaller family. The bottom line is that he cannot find housing anywhere, and he's a voice that we have to listen to as well. So I just want to put that out there. So for all the residents who would say, we can't have this, there's also employers who are part of this community who say, but we're struggling too, and what are we doing? What are you doing to help? So, but the way I look at it, so this is a difficult decision. I look at it as, but we are a community, and what a community does, we all need to do our part. And to me, what that means is give and take. And so I agree that so I appreciate that a developer is interested in bringing multi-units, something a little bit different, but that sort of starts answering the call for the housing shortage. But at the same time, just because there's an urgency, we can't start cramming stuff where it doesn't fit. And to me, the fact that this highly depends on a laneway, for example, that is not part of the property, starts telling you that we're trying to cram something. So so I can't support this application either, because I wish there'd be a little bit more give perhaps on the developer side. Maybe it could be a 2-unit, maybe it's a 3-unit, like something that could fit. So it's that give and take. And yes, it would be a little bit different for neighbors, but that's where the give and take would come as well. And it would be different for council and for staff. So rather than dragging this on at the site plan control and all the costs that would be involved, and the more we push, we kick this longer, let's see if there can be more give and take and another conversation with a different application.
Okay. Any other questions or comments? Well, I'm hearing that there's enough support that we deny this application. Largely because of the unopened township owned lane. So I'm going to get a mover and second, report number DS 2255, entitled zoning bylaw application of leverage and development received. That zoning bylaw amendment application number D14Z1022, leverage and development relating to the property located at G's concession south of Main Street, register plan number 18, known as 51403. Ron McNeil line be denied on the basis that council does not support the development of the site, obtaining vehicle access through the adjacent township owned unopened lane. Moore and Linsky, all in favor? Carried unanimously. Thank you. Thank you for attending, folks. You're welcome to stay for the rest of the meeting, and it could be a big eye opener. Good night, folks. Well, we appreciate Max as well. He's been a.
Wish you good luck in whatever you're gonna do with the rest of your life.
Thanks, folks.
You're not going. You're not going.
Okay, well, we'll see if we can get this done so we can watch the ball game. Jeff, you got the next. Emergencies activity report.
Just a few things to add to my activity report. So the report is for this month of September, but I'll just give a few additional things that's going on in the township with the fire right at this time. Sorry, get the feedback there. Oh, there we go. So it wasn't me. Anyways, we just finished up a positive week of fire prevention last week. Our fire prevention team went out to 3 of the schools in the area and visited 10 classrooms and went through about 500 kids to show them the ways to escape your house. So if there happens to be a fire, that was the main focus of this year's thing. So unfortunately, Ontario right now is on track to beat our last year's record of fire deaths in the province. And we're trying to do our best to make sure it doesn't happen here. So we also just had an open house in the South Station last Saturday, which involved for looking for some new recruits and give some public some information on what we do at the fire department. We also have a second one coming up here on the 29th here. It's going to be held in Springfield. Helter Widmer, you asked me the other last meeting or 2 meetings ago about the accidents and updated accidents and stuff in the community, and just looked through the OPP reports, and our municipality isn't the only one that's having a problem. So overall, increase in accidents and fatalities in the province of Ontario this year is up 24% from last year. So where it's not just a Malahide problem, it's a overall problem. And the OPP is saying the reason of that is the inattentive drivers and speeding, mainly drunk driving, the regular stuff that's mostly avoidable. So Other than that, the report is what I have. If any other questions from the report itself, I'm be more than happy to answer.
Okay, thanks, Jeff. Any questions for Jeff on the report? Go ahead, Jeff.
Through your worship, Jeff, just on this one, on the burn complaints. I see you have 4 burn complaints. What, just out of curiosity, what kind of complaints are we this time? of year?
Sometimes we'll get a neighbor or somebody call in if they have a fire that's neighbors having a smoke going through their property, or somebody's burning something they shouldn't and they don't have a burn permit. Sometimes they do have a burn permit. We get there, there's nothing actually wrong, just some neighbors having some issues. So most times that's what the burn complaints are. But there is times where we have to educate the public on what their burn permit allows them to do and stuff that they aren't allowed to burn. So we try to first educate them, and most times they're not back to the same place. So
Thank you. Any other questions for Jeff? Mover and second of his report. Then. Lewis and Galinsky, all in favor? Carried. Communications study.
all right, so the study was just a basic overall run of the study. As we had a study completed, we were brought to our attention that there's some issues coming up with our radio system. So that's the radio towers that the county fire departments own as a group. So we have a maintenance contract with Bearcom. They maintain check the maintenance and stuff monthly. They monitor to make sure everything's working. So we had the batteries go this year, which we were just replaced. And then we had a leak in the Ford water tower, which caused one of our TAC channels it fried one of the pieces of equipment. That piece of equipment is not replaceable anymore. So it's discontinued. In order us to repair that channel for that location, we'd have to replace that same piece of equipment in every radio tower. We can get away with having that channel for certain locations is not working. So to replace that was over around $100,000 somewhere in there. Bearcom at the same time told us that we should be looking into replacing the whole system as a whole, which somewhere in there is $1 million to replace. We asked the third party to do that study, and they've went through the repair report. And you can see in the report that they don't recommend replacing anything at this time. But to start to put away a reserve fund to be able to fund it in approximately about 5 years to replace it. Once that is replaced, we just had so that this system was put in 2014. So we were getting we get 13 to 15 years out of it. Again, once we replace it in 5 years, we could probably, barring any changes of technology that's changing our radio system overall, we'd probably be doing the same thing in 15 years again. So it's just probably about a 15-year shelf life and that part of the capital.
Okay, thanks, Jeff.
And these costs are shared between all 7 municipalities. So, yeah,
Is it an equal share or is it based on?
it's equal share. Yeah.
Any questions for Jeff on the water or the tower replacement and communication replacement? Mark?
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor, through to Jeff. In their report, they talk about shoreline coverage. And I see Port Bruce, Port Burrell, a bunch of other ones, but every time we do something, I always ask, is Port Bruce all right now? And I'm always told yes. And then it comes back and it's no. Is there still dead spots down there?
It's spotty at best. Sometimes depends where you are in town. And it depends the weather. Sometimes the weather stops it from reflecting a bit back. Typically along Imperial Road all the way along the beach line, it's okay. Sometimes you get tighter up into some of the hill there. It's right along the pier, and sometimes it's bad. It's mostly portable radios that at that time. If you get into a truck radio, lots of times we could repeat out, and we could use a repeater. It's not as bad in Port Bruce as it was, but it's still depending on the day.
Not great.
It's just location, the geographics of it. That's all.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions for Tony?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just a couple of things. So let's say we go ahead in 5 years and replace to the tune of $1 million. So the water damage that happened, can that be prevented so we don't damage another critical piece? Do you
Yeah,
know?
the water damage the water leak has been fixed. The Ford Tower where this issue is, was probably by the time we replace this system will be gone. They're talking it's gonna be leaving us in 2 to 5 years. And we'll have to find another spot for another tower to hook it up. That is more of a Central Elgin issue at this time because that's where the Ford Tower is located. So they're having a little trouble. They'll have to put it up in some other higher spot. Maybe Amazon or something will have a spot there for us.
So, to follow up, Mr. Mayor, then, so after 5 years, do we have to plan ahead for another replacement? Like, do you know what would be the life cycle of it? And should we continue to save a little bit of money aside for this? Or do we just kind of wait and see, like in this case?
I'm probably gonna suggest that we do the same thing with the rest of our capital stuff, which Adam's working through right now to be prepared. I'm going by the guess that we've just got 13 to 14, 15 years out of this. And barring any changes in technology or lifelines of technology, I'm sure it'll be probably the same thing in 15 years again. So whereas we're going to have to put 30,000 away now, we maybe get away with $10,000 or yeah.
Any other questions for Jeff? Mover and second reports, F 2215 entitled Elgin County Communication Study be received. And that council direct staff to follow the recommendation of KVA Communications and initiate a capital reserve fund of 30,000 per year for 5 years starting in 2023. Cerna and Jaguar on paper. Carried. Blue box. You're doing that, Adam?
Through you, your worship, yes. We have Adam Boylan who will be presenting the report to council, but we also have Cassandra Young, our public works coordinator, who contributed a lot to this report. If there's any questions that Adam or I don't know the answer to, Cassandra's here to answer some of those questions, but I'll defer to Adam to present this report.
Thank you. So as detailed in the report, the province recently passed legislation which transfers the responsibility of recycling collection from municipalities to producers. So a big change for us to take on. It will also expand the types of items accepted in blue boxes and standardize the service across the province. This transfer of responsibility is taking place in the township on July 1st, 2023. Circular Materials Ontario, or CMO, as we referred to it in the report, is an organization representing producers, and they're offering the township monthly compensation in the amount of $6.06 per household per month for us to retain responsibility of the service until the end of 2025. The purpose of tonight's report is to help council decide whether or not this offer should be accepted. What complicates this decision is the fact that the township is currently in a contract with Miller Waste to provide recycling services for the township until May 2028. So, and we do have an option to extend with them to May 2030. Since the writing of this report, we've been working with Miller on a mutually beneficial outcome. So there is some content from those discussions that we want to provide to council in this reporting tonight. So I just want to run through the options again and strengthen the content of the report by providing an update of our conversation with Miller Waste. First off, regardless of which option is chosen by residents, residents will continue to have their recycling picked up every 2 weeks, and the township will generate cost savings from these changes, which will be passed down to residents through the budget. So first off, whichever option is chosen, those two facts are true. Excuse me. So with option one is we accept Circular Materials offer. Their offer fully offsets our costs to contract Miller Waste to collect recycling, just like what is mentioned in the report. Miller Waste continues their contract until 2025, at which point CMO can choose to keep them on or use a different contractor. In the event that a different contractor is selected, the township could be liable for prorated contract penalties. So that's what we've been talking to Miller about. How do we mitigate the impact of those potential penalties? So in discussions with Miller Waste, they are willing to waive any potential contract penalties if, and this is information that is not provided in the report, the township decides to exercise its right to extend its garbage and leaf collection contract to 2030. So use that 2-year option we have in our existing contract. and transition from a 5-day collection cycle, so Monday to Friday, to a 4-day Tuesday to Friday pickup cycle. So with option 1, we can choose to accept SEMO's offer and accept Miller Waste's offer to avoid potential contract costs, or we can accept SEMO's offer and reject Miller Waste's offer. Option 2 would see the township reject SEMO's offer. If SEMO were to not provide Miller Waste with contract for recycling collection after the township rejects, we could be liable for significant contract penalties as a result. So staff's recommendation is for council to express interest to both SEMO and Miller Waste for acceptance of their offers. This is option 1A. As this course of action has the lowest potential cost exposure and there are no concerns about Miller Waste performance in the past. Movement to a 4-day collection cycle, while not ideal, would still see residential pickup frequency maintained. And though the actual weekly pickup day for some residents would change. At this point, council would only be providing expression of interest to SEMO and Miller Waste to bring forward agreements for council to consider at a later date. Any new collection schedule would come forward for council's consideration before implemented. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Adam, for that report. Question for Adam in regard to the blue box transition going forward? Dominique?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So I just want to clarify the beginning. You said there's no change. It's recycling is every 2 weeks, which right now some would say, but don't I have pick up of recycling every week? But I know it's every 2 weeks for each type. So that would be the same, like 1 week paper, 1 week container. Oh, sorry, for Cassandra.
Yes, so it would be maintained for sure until 2025. If at that time we continue with Miller Waste, then the contract will continue with SEMO, it would then continue. If SEMO decides that they want to take over, and at that time we have to possibly buy out of our contract with Miller Waste, then they would have full control and it may change. They are regulated that they do have to pick it up once every 2 weeks. They may pick it up more to meet their goals, their requirements in the regulation, but at that time, we don't know.
Right.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor. Through to Cassandra, I guess. As far as regular garbage, is that still gonna be every week then?
Yes, so that will be maintained and it will be with Miller Waste. There is potential to not have to buy out if we possibly make that schedule change. It'll still be once every week. It just might change for some residents as to what day. But that's not what we're currently deciding on.
No, but it'd be a 4-day cycle. It's part and parcel whole deal, in my opinion. So, thank you.
But up until 2025, nothing changes, right? Okay, all right, so. Any other questions? Go ahead.
Just to clarify, so if we take up Miller Waste on their proposal and we move to a 4-day pickup schedule, garbage and recycling, like the garbage pickup would go to a 4-day cycle as well, is my understanding, right? Just to clarify that point.
The industry is taking over the cost of this, and that's what, you know, the AMO's been after for about 10 years, trying to get the suppliers to actually fund this program. So that's the good news. You know, it's a little up in the air after 2025, but I think, you know, we're going in the right direction. Right?
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just a quick question. Are they gonna be accepting more materials than what they are now?
Yeah, I think they're looking at, like I mentioned, they do, they're looking to expand the number of items that can go into the blue box. I think the main one being single source plastics, which were previously not allowed. We will be looking at promotional educational materials. I think that they would be coming from SEMO in this instance, but those are details we still need to work out. So residents will be supplied with the necessary information to stack their blue boxes according to the new legislation.
Okay, what's a single source plastic? I guess I don't know.
It's like plastic wrap. It's like plastic straws, things of that nature that they're not easily recyclable, so they haven't been accepted in the past.
Okay.
Any other questions or comments? Mover and second, report number PW 2251 entitled Blue Box Transition Update be received. Council directs staff to provide an expression of intent to enter into a service agreement with Circular Materials Ontario as described in option 1, number PW 2251. Council directs staff to provide an expression of interest to extend its garbage and leaf waste collection contract with Miller Waste for 2 years and consider transitioning from a 5-day to a 4-day collection schedule in a manner least disruptive for the township residents in exchange for a full waiver of any potential termination fees as a result of legislature amendments to the Blue Box program. Louis, Winder, all in favor? Carried. Allison, are you doing the next one?
Yes, through your worship. So this is just a follow-up report requested from last meeting, providing some alternative options with regards to the provision of this legislatively mandated service. If there are any questions, I'd be happy to answer them.
We discussed this previously about the agreement with Aird and Bearless. Was the integrity commissioner and those meeting and ombudsman option. So any questions? Mover and second. Oh, Jess, go ahead.
Mayor Manel, would there be any change in the cost per hour if we go with the option where we just do the first part and the county does the second?
Through your worship, there's no cost change. It would still be the $489 per hour for the service that's requested, whether we pick one or all three.
And the county have got the same people. Good.
Well, thank you, Mr. Mayor. I know I talked to Adam. Is there going to be a filing fee for someone that wants to put in an objection or a concern of what we've done or anybody's done?
So through you, your worship, that was some commentary that Alice and I worked on in the report. So that's an option that council can consider. So it doesn't necessarily reduce or change the rate that Aird and Bearless has for the township, but what it would be it would sort of try to work to reduce some of those frivolous or vexatious complaints from getting filed in the first place. So that's something, as I mentioned, it's an option. There's a draft whereas clause there if council wants to impose that.
Yeah, I think that's a good idea. It's a different world than it was 4 years ago when we picked the other people. I don't like the price of it, but if we don't have any problems, it's not going to cost us anything, I guess. So I guess that's maybe the road I'm looking at.
Jess?
Mayor Manel, is there a retainer fee here?
I don't think so.
No.
No, there is no retainer with this.
With either plan?
With either, no, Air Bearless does not have a retainer for any options.
Any other questions? Mover and second, report number 22-12 entitled Follow-up Report RFP Results, County of Elgin, RFP 2022 P36 Integrity Commissioner Service with Closed Meeting Investigator and Ombudsman option be received. The council agreed to enter in a 2-year agreement with Aird and Bearless LLP for Integrity Commissioner, Closed Meeting Investigator, and Ombudsman Services. The council proceed with the adoption of bylaw number 22-80, authorizing the mayor and clerk to sign an agreement with Aird and Bearless LLP for the appointment of Integrity Commissioner, Closed Meeting Investigator, and Ombudsman Services. Moore and Gier, all in favor? Okay.
$100 fee or whatever might that be. That's why I haven't handed it. That's good.
Okay, severance application, Eric, are you still there?
Yes, your worship.
Okay, the Putnam.
Yes, this application is before by the owner Stan Putnam for 13379 Peeler Road. Before giving a presentation, I will just note it's been brought to my attention On page 106 of the agenda package, the report references that the property has, or sorry, that's correct, that's their file. Please disregard that. This consent application has been submitted to permit the recreation of 2 lots that have previously merged on title. Currently, both lots have an existing dwelling as well as accessory structures, and the owner is looking to recreate the lots to have separate ownership. Both the Elgin County and Township of Malahide official plans permit land services that are of technical nature to recreate lots that have merged on title, provided that the proposed lots conform to the other policies of the official plans, as well as conform to the zoning bylaw. Proposed settlements would meet the other criteria outlined under both the Elgin County and Malahide official plans, and the proposed lots would meet all the criteria of the Hamlet residential zone, including lot frontage and lot area. And no comments have been received at the time of the submission of this report, and it's recommended the consent be supported. That concludes the presentation. Happy to take questions from members of council.
Thank you, Eric. Question for Eric on this severance application? None. Mover and second, report number DS 2252, entitled application for consent to sever Stan Putnam be received. Application for consent to sever Stan Putnam E71-22 relating to the property located at lot 13, concession 10. Geographic Township of South Dorchester be supported for the reasons set out in this report. This report be forwarded to the Land Division Committee for review and consideration. Serna and Glitzky, all in favor? Carried. Another application by Van Blinderdine. Go ahead, Eric.
Thank you. Through your worship, this consent application has been submitted by Ann Blinderbean on behalf of the owners. Again, just before I give a presentation, it's on page 106 of the agenda package that there is an error in this report. Page 106 notes that the property has frontage on Imperial Road. However, this property actually has frontage on Putnam Road. Just wanted to clarify that for members of council. This consent application has been submitted to permit a lot addition or lot boundary adjustment to convey land from the owner's property to the applicant's property. This is in order to resolve an encroachment on the subject lands. The land proposed to be severed and conveyed has been historically used by the applicant as part of their property. However, at some point it was discovered that the land actually is in the ownership of the owners at 14508 Putnam Road. And so the applicant is now looking to purchase that portion of lands that's been historically used by them from the owners. So the property is designated agriculture under both the Elgin County and Malahide official plans, and both of these plans permit lot boundary adjustments provided they comply with the other policies of the official plan as well as the zoning bylaw, and no new lot is proposed to be created. The subject property is zoned small lot agricultural, and the lands proposed to be enlarged or zoned rural residential, and therefore if the proposed consent is approved, the enlarged parcel would have multiple zones in the same lot. Under section 3.5 of the zoning bylaw, it treats these zone boundaries as separate lot boundaries. So therefore, it's recommended that if approved as a condition of approval, a zoning bylaw amendment be required to rezone the lands roads to be conveyed so that the proposed enlarged parcel would all have the same zone. The lands proposed to be retained would satisfy the minimum lot area and lot frontage requirements of the A4 zone. No comments were received prior to the submission of this report. It's recommended that the consent application be supported. And that concludes the presentation. If you have any questions from members of council.
Thank you, Eric. Questions for Eric on this application? Seeing none. Mover and seconder, report number DS 2250, entitled application for consent to sever by Ann Van Blinderdine be received, and the application for consent to sever E77-22 relating to property located at lot 3, concession 8, RP 11R 10-22-6, Geographic Township of South Dorchester be supported for reasons set out in this report. This report before the Land Division Committee for review and consideration. Serna, Moore, all in favor? Carried. Thank you, Eric. Good night.
Good night, worship.
Next, we have committee and outside boards. There's one from the Long Point. Any questions or comments? Mover and second to receive and file. Louis, Jagger, all in favor? Carried. Correspondence, there's 4 items on correspondence. Anyone wish to make notice of any one of these? Move in second to receive and file then. Bittner and Serta or Glenski, all in favor? Carried. Go ahead, Mark.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I guess there was a communications through AMO brought out about a federal Cannabis Act review. They basically want, municipalities or whatever to put in their input. So what do they think of this? There's a questionnaire, a discussion paper. I guess it's open until November 21st, 2022, which isn't very long. But I think, we have a vested interest in that along with other municipalities. And I think we should, give our 2 cents worth to it. So I would suggest that we can do a report somehow. I don't know how we do that, but.
Well, we can pass a resolution. In fact, Allison has given us one that is, I think, speaks to
Like it.
exactly what you were talking
Like
about,
it.
right?
That's a lottery number.
Mover and second, the council direct staff to prepare a specific municipal impact and cost in relation to the current cannabis legislation as per the Association of Municipalities of Ontario. Initiative encouraged municipalities to submit feedback as part of the federal government's cannabis legislation review process. And that staff forward this information to the federal government for inclusion in the cannabis legislation review process and to AMO. Is that what you said?
Yes.
I thought so.
Wasn't long.
Are you gonna move it? Seconder? Serta, all in favor? Carried. Go ahead. Eric.
First to a kind of election related campaigning. A lot of the residents down Mount Salem Way would like either a safety light or a stop or a pole light at the intersection there, because they say it's very hard to see there and it's just a bad intersection. And if we're talking about bad intersections other than Ron McNeil Line, Imperial Road, or 45 or John Wise Line, Imperial Road, we might as well add this one to the list as well. That's item number 1. Item number 2 is
We could forward that on to the county to consider. Sure.
yeah, okay. Item number 2 is there's been some residents that are complaining about the website that we have, the Malahide website. As far as the election goes, they said there's not enough information there. I don't know. I can't get on the website and I don't have internet. So, but anyway, maybe we could look into that. The third thing is, and I'm quite proud of this, is and everybody should look this up, is the Ontario government introduced Bill 50, which proclaims the month of October as Hungarian Heritage Month. And being a first generation Hungarian, my grandfather coming here in 1924, my dad coming in 37, and both of them were very successful in their own right and everything, worked hard. And if you go through and you read this, and they're talking about the contributions made by this nationality, and they're describing them, how hard they work and things like that, and their role models and all that. I actually thought they were talking about me. But anyways, I didn't say that to be funny. But no, it was quite an honor. So I just wanted to bring that to everybody's attention. And the other fact is, and I don't know why they did this actually, because the minute somebody hears that, all of a sudden it's, do we have a Dutch month? Do we have a German month? Do we have a Polish month? Do we have, and really it should have been immigration month, because all these people, and I know being on the tobacco board, when you read the owners list of farms, it was like reading last names out of the UN visitors guide, because everybody in there, there's lots of places. But anyways, I just thought it was nice to know that and bring it to everybody's knowledge that from now on, every October is Hungarian Heritage Month.
There you go.
So I'm gonna get, I want to get a flag and push mom down Main Street and have a parade. She can hold the flag. Thank you.
Any other business? Before we go to bylaws? None. Mover and seconder, the bylaw number 22-77 being a bylaw to appoint municipal bylaw enforcement property standards officers for the corporation, the township of Malahide, be given the first, second, third reading, properly signed and sealed. Mover and Serna, all in favor? Carried. And mover and seconder, bylaw number 22-61 being a bylaw to provide for the drainage works on the McDonald Drain Branch E be read a third time, finally passed and properly signed and sealed. Lewis and Glinski, all in favor? Carried. And mover and seconder, the number 22-78 being confirmatory bylaw, be given a first, second, third reading, properly signed and sealed. Maybe your last chance, Jess. More on Winder, all in favor? Opposed, carried.
Something we don't know.
Well, you told me there was 250 people voted all of a sudden. I wondered. And mover and seconder, council adjourned meeting at 9 o'clock. Meet again on November 3rd at 7:30. Linsky and Winder, all in favor, carried.
Bylaw people yesterday.